Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Housing and Economic Development Committee. I am James Torrance, Chair of the committee and representative of the 7th Council District. I am joined today by council members and Vice Chair Odette Ramos of the 14th District.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Jermaine Jones of the 12th District. I'm also joined by council members John Bullock of the 9th District and also Councilwoman Felicia Porter of the 10th District. We have representatives from the mayor's office and council president's office here, and the committee staff from the committee office of from the office of council services is Julianne Jemmett. And today we'll be having 2 voting sessions. The voting sessions are as follows, which will be 260163 Community Health Food Act, and then followed by City Council Bill 260141. 250141, Rental Dwelling Health and Safety Enforcement Act. Then for my bill, which most of you are here for, which is 25087, eviction chattels, time period for reclamation will be heard last. I'm sorry, we're just going to do the votes first. There will be no public testimony on the bills that we're voting for so that we can devote the majority of the time to public testimony on my bill and then to also explain the amendments that are before the floor on my bill as well. With that being said, just to be very clear about the ground rules for tonight, you will have a strict 2 minutes. If you are in need of any services, we will refer you to a member of DCHC staff who may be here that can assist you with anything that you need related to code enforcement. In addition to that, if there's anything else that we will try our best to connect you with the service provider if you do need any assistance. We recognize that the issues that we're discussing tonight are hard and they are complex and that there are immediate needs that people may have in the room that may not have been addressed prior to being in this room. So we just want to be sensitive to both that and understand that we are here to serve you as the people of Baltimore. With that being said, we'll immediately go into a voting session on 260163 Community Health Food Access. Our chair will now turn it over to Councilwoman Porter to explain the amendments.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. This is a follow-up from last week, the Community Healthy Foods Program. Amendment 1, we began Amendment 1 with striking the beginning of line 6 and putting it in as be ordained by the mayor and City Council of Baltimore. Then we go into definitions, community benefits agreement, community-based enterprises, community food retailer, culturally relevant. I know that was a big issue at our last hearing where we talked about from the law department what culturally relevant means. And so in this particular set of amendments, we defined it even more. Diet-related illnesses, we interchanged coronary heart disease, obesity, high blood pressure, and diabetes. Then we also changed the name for community healthy grants to community healthy grants, meaning grants awarded pursuant to the subtitle. We also talked through the Food Policy and Planning Division, and so 48-2 goes over establishing that within the Department of Planning, goes over Food Policy Director, staff budget and duties, and then on 6 of 13, Healthy Food Priority Grant Program, what the program is, sources of funding, eligibility, and then 48-9, form of application. Next, 48-10, just for our colleagues, we talked about the equity and priority, what that means for this particular grant program. 48-11, we went over grant parameters. We went over permissible uses. Following last hearing, we talked about what the Healthy Foods Grant Program would be used for and how it could be used. Grant disbursement. Next, page 10, we went 48-12, we went through non-compliance, technical assistance, community engagement, which follows up on the public commentary that we heard last week about public listening sessions, what it would look like to integrate food from community within the store model. 48-15 is rules and regulations. 48-16 is annual report. And finally, last but not least, on the last page, just want to make sure that colleagues see this, page 13 of 13, the report should include an assessment of. This was something that I know that was a concern last week, what the annual assessment will include. And so there's a list of items of what that assessment will include that is delivered to the city council to present findings and recommendations of the report. I'll entertain any questions.
Thank you, Councilwoman Porter. I just want to commend you for the annual reporting. There's an element of that I requested from planning. It took them 2 years to get to me. I'm happy that we'll have that in there because that was an issue that I had when they were rolling out the ARPA funded programs and they didn't have the capacity to, but
Sure.
now that this is required in the reporting, I thank you for that.
Yes.
Any other questions, colleagues? Perfect. We're now joined by Councilman Zach Blanchard of the, Lord Jesus, 11th District. Perfect. It's the middle. And, Councilman Glover of the 13th District. Perfect. Colleagues, any questions before we move on from Councilwoman Porter's bill? No questions. I will entertain a motion to move the amendments.
So moved.
Amendments have been moved by Ramos. Is there a second? Second by Glover. Chair votes yes. Ramos.
Yes.
Parker. Oh, Lord, not Parker. Lord, it's been a day. Blanchard.
It happens. Yes.
Jones. Aye. Glover. Yes. Of a vote 5-0, the amendments pass. Is there a motion to move the bill as amended?
So moved.
Moved by Ramos. It sounded like I heard a second from Councilman Glover again. Chair votes yes. Ramos.
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Jones.
Yes.
Glover. Of a vote of 5-0, the bill passes as amended, and we'll move on to the September 14th council meeting for second reading. Congratulations, Councilwoman.
Thank you so much, and thank you all so much for members of the committee. And so, since we have an audience today, the Community Healthy Food Program is expanding food access to not only grocery stores, but food co-ops throughout the city of Baltimore. And it's a partnership with the Office of Food Policy and BDC. And so I'm grateful that I have the support of my colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Now we're gonna move to City Council Bill 250141, Rental Dwelling Health and Safety Act. I now turn it over to Councilwoman Ramos to walk us through her amendments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, we've had 2 hearings on this bill. And the last hearing, we went through the amendments. There is one amendment that is 42 pages because it rewrites, we had to rewrite the entire bill because of the, some of the changes that need to be made. So I'm going to walk through the entire thing. You'll note in the packet, there's also a chart that I put together to make things a little bit easier to take a look at what the bill talks about. And again, this is all not new information for the committee. We've had 2 hearings on it. So I just want to take a second to walk through it for transparency. The first part of the bill, well, let me just talk about the purpose of the bill. The Rental Dwelling Safety and Enforcement Act is a bill that works to improve the rental licensing process to ensure that we have more landlords that are licensed. It also adds more enforcement so that egregious violators of our housing code and our rental laws there's a lot more enforcement than just fines. We also are working on create in this bill a rental inspector licensing program so that rental inspectors, even though you have to be home inspectors by the state of Maryland, you would be licensed by the city to do work as well. And that helps us with accountability. There would be specific training, et cetera. So we tried to solve a couple of problems with this that have occurred. One is that we have a fairly low rate of rental licenses properties that have rental licenses. And so part of this bill does include, and that's in the amendments, notice to any non-owner occupied property owner to ensure that they are notified. They can't say they didn't know. They have to get licensed if they are renting their properties. And then also we are trying to resolve this issue of, we've seen time and time again some fraud and also the need to improve our rental licensing portal and other mechanisms to be able to make sure that what is what is inspected through the third-party inspections is actually, what's happening. We've seen where sometimes there are properties that get licensed that shouldn't get their license. And that has become a big deal. So we try to work on that in this bill as well. So I'm going to go through various pages and the changes that we made from the original, also, looking at the bill in its entirety. So the first 10 pages, 1 through 10, create a new program in our city called Rental Licensing Receivership. There are other cities that do this. Rental licensing receivership is similar to vacant property receivership, except that it is for rental properties, all of them, not just big ones, but also the small ones. And the idea here is the most egregious violators of the housing code and our rental law, licensing laws, the city could take them to court, and it would be similar to what we do with vacant properties, where there would be a receiver, a person or a group that would then be responsible for the property, bring it up to code, work with the tenants, and then sell it to a new owner. Yes, if you violate our laws, if our landlords violate our laws and our people are living in bad conditions, we don't want you to have that building anymore. And so that's what the receivership does. It's a very, very high bar. So it's not like we're taking everybody. But it is something that is really important and has been done in other cities. And I think makes sense for us. DHCD specifically wanted this program to be started. In this bill, it will be enacted 30 days after signature from the mayor. The rest of the bill is enacted July 1 of 2027, so that DHCD has time to put the systems in place and we can make sure that they have the resources that they need. So that is pages 1 through 10. I do want to say that we have had a lot of input on this bill, and I really appreciate as many people and stakeholders that have been involved with this as well. Page 10 would have the list of penalties. We added a penalty for not being licensed as a third-party inspector. And I'll talk about the inspectors in just a minute. We also add on page 11, we're asking for more information about the ownership of the property. The reason we need to do that is because in Maryland, we have single-member LLCs and we do not have LLC transparency. So we are asking for a little bit more information about who actually owns the building so that there is accountability. We also, on page 12, have, again, the reminders to the current licensees, as well as those who own non-owner occupied properties, that they are obligated to be licensed and registered. So once they get a citation, they can't say, I didn't know. Well, no, we sent you the notice. And it's not a one-time notice, it's every other year for the rental licensing, and its registration is every year notice. For priority dwelling. So the Strengthening Renter Safety Act 2-3 years ago had a provision in it that said that for buildings 20 units or more, that if they meet certain criteria, like they have a violation that's been unabated, that there's multiple 311s and have a low Inspire score, that they become a priority dwelling, and that makes sure that they get a lot more inspections to come off of the priority dwelling designation. Well, the first list of priority dwellings came out in January, and wow, we had a response. And so what this provision does on page 14 is to allow for a runway to come off of the designation of priority dwelling within 90 days if you cure the violations. And DHCD may put, We're good? Okay, all right. Apologies. And so if the building wants to come off of that priority designation for that year, because the priority designation is for an entire year, if you want to come off within the first 90 days, you have to come into compliance with that violation. And DHCD may put some other conditions on coming off of that designation. And so we have that language in the bill. The original Strengthening Renter Safety Act also had that list of priority dwellings would be around for 5 years. We have taken that off. It seemed like unnecessary there. So on page 15 and 16, we define what a rental inspector is and rental inspections. In the original bill, in the original Strengthening Renter Safety Act, it talked about a home inspector, which is somebody designated by the state to do home inspections. Baltimore City is the only jurisdiction in the entire US, as I understand it, that has rental inspectors, third-party inspectors that do the inspections for renewals and for licensing. So we wanted to create our own program that licenses these rental inspectors and make sure that we're designating them. You still have to be a licensed home inspector with Maryland, but we want to designate them that these are the folks that we are saying can inspect our rental inspectors for the purposes of licensing. Page 17 is more notice. Page 19, wow, some people didn't like this at all, but it is a requirement that the water bill has to be paid. And we do know that for the license, we do know that there can be some challenges with the correctness, if you would, of the water bills. And so obviously there is some working to be done with DPW to make sure that your bills are correct, and we will continue to do that. There is notice for the tenant for the inspections, and also the selection of rental inspectors. We also have rental inspection, so to be transparent, that if you're going to renew your license, which you should, we want you to do that, that you can't use the same rental inspector, for renewals. So that's every 2 years. And that way there's an opportunity to make sure that we're not having drive-bys, which we've seen, and an opportunity for, it's possible that somebody missed something, 1 year. Rental inspection report, we are including photos so that those can be transparent and, about what the violations might be. We also have on page 23 and 24 an audit requirement. So DHCD will will audit at least 100 of the inspections a year. We say at least because there could be more. And also, anybody receiving a violation notice after 60 days after renewal will be part of that audit process. And we do know that DHCD has been clear that you're going to need some more resources for those inspections. So one of the reasons why we're pushing the enactment date back to 2027 is so that we can work on the budget and resources for lots of things that DHCD needs, not just this, but this is one of the things on the list. We have also on page 24, training for property managers for residences that are for older adults, 20 units or more. We're finding that in some older adult rental buildings that since there is no property manager licensing, although it's coming, heads up, that there's a need to have some additional training on customer service needs for our older adults. So that is in here as well. Oh, I already talked about this. We're almost done, Mr. Chair. I appreciate your indulgence. Page 30 and 31 is the provisions for revocation of a license, which includes if a landlord is retaliating or discriminates or intimidates anyone. We have DHCD will reinspect if a license is revoked. And then also there's a tenant complaint process. So in addition to 311, tenants can also have an opportunity to write to DHCD and get a better explanation about what's happening and possibly change, particularly if somebody gets a license that shouldn't have gotten a license. There's notices to tenants if they need to vacate, that DHCD there would be resources available. Public Information Act work, and then instead of a judicial review, we have changed this to an administrative review so that there's an appeal process that's administrative and not judicial. There's annual reporting, and then page 40 and 42 is the licensing for the rental inspectors. And then we already talked about enactment. So the idea here is to tighten up our rental licensing, making sure that there's a little bit more teeth to our enforcement. And I look forward to asking for my colleagues' favorable vote on the amendments as well as the full bill. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Colleagues, any questions? Okay. Seeing none, I will entertain a motion on the amendments.
Second?
Moved by Blanchard, seconded by Ramos. Chair votes yes. Ramos.
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Jones.
Aye.
Glover. Amendments move 5-0. I will now entertain a motion on the bill as amended.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Blanchard, seconded by Ramos. Chair votes yes. Ramos.
Yes.
Blanchard.
Yes.
Jones. Glover.
Yes.
Of a vote of 5-0, this bill moves on to second reader on September 14th. Congratulations, Councilwoman.
Thank you, colleagues, and thank you to DHCD. Thank you to everybody who had involved with it and to DHCD for literally the hours that we spent on this bill. Thank you.
Yeah, and we just wanted to take 1 second to thank the bill sponsor for all of her friendly collaboration throughout the process. We took our time and got this one right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect. We will begin with 250087, eviction chattels, time to reclaim for the purpose of requiring a landlord to retain tenant's property for a specified period of time under certain circumstances, requiring a certain notice to be provided to a tenant upon eviction, and generally relating to eviction and a tenant's rights to reclaim personal property. Opening remarks will be by the chair, then followed by the designees of the city agencies, and then we'll go into committee questions, and then we'll go into apologies. And then we'll go into public testimony. I just want to make sure everyone understands that you will be invited for 2 minutes of public testimony. Please provide your first and last name. At the desk, you'll see colors. Do they light up? They light up when your time is close. We will then remind you what each light means so that you're not shocked. And please, depending on your height, please lower it. It happens all the time. And if you know someone's coming after you, please increase it if they're tall or short. It helps us because sometimes people don't. And just for the public's research, I know a number of people have reached out saying that Charm City TV is down. It is back up. WebEx has been recording the entire time so that we're all in purpose, all in step, and all compliant with Open Meetings Act, just to put that out there publicly. With that being said, I'll start with my opening remarks. Good evening, and thank you to my colleagues, our agency partners, advocates, property owners, tenants, and members of the public who are here today. We're here to consider my bill, which is the Tenant Possession Recovery Act. For me, this bill is personal. I know what it means for a family to fall behind. I know what it means to have to start over after a parent is evicted. I experienced it myself. I know what it looks like when people you love are trying to hold a family together while figuring out where they are going to live and sleep and how they're even going to get to employment or school the next day, or what they can save, or how they can go about rebuilding their life. I watch people lose everything. So when we walk and talk about eviction, I don't just see the warrant of restitution or another case on a docket. I think about that moment that actually feels what it actually feels like for a family. You already lost your home. Then in the same moment, you can lose your clothes, your medication, your identification, your work equipment, your children's school supplies, your family photos, important records, furniture you worked and saved to buy for many months and years. Sometimes you lose the few things that could help you start over again. And that is just not a hypothetical. In the Tallman versus the mayor and city council of Baltimore City, a family was evicted earlier than expected while they were at work. Under our current law at the time, everything that they left behind was immediately deemed abandoned. Their landlord told them that their belongings were now his. According to the court, the Todmans were effectively left with the clothes that they had worn to work and school that day. I think about that. I think about that as someone who teaches constitutional law and ensuring that people have a right to property and liberty, and thinking about what does it mean to have due process. This process puts people at a stake that both a landlord may have the right to possess their property again, as well as the tenants have a right to possess their properties that are in said property as well. We have to find a way to make sure that dignity is at the heart of any policy that we move forward. And I say that because I don't work in this council because it is just simply a nice job to have. It is about meeting people with solutions. And that solution is what we think about. You go home in the morning, you go to work in the morning, and you come home, clothes, furniture, and family possessions, and the pieces of your life you have built are gone. The Fourth Circuit made it clear that Baltimore's system did not provide the process people were constitutionally owed. The court affirmed that at a minimum, tenants must have an opportunity after eviction to retrieve possessions that they did not intend to abandon. We know, and too often in the current system in Baltimore City, that our actual rental process as well as eviction is not perfect. We have to find a way to make the clear, bright line rules so that everyone has a fair chance and that the processes meet everyone's needs, whether you are a landlord or a tenant. I believe in fairness. I serve in a district where it is the home of the Honorable Justice Thurgood Marshall, but it's the same district where the Civil Rights Act was written on Druid Hill Avenue. I also serve in a district and have on my wall, at the top of my wall, as a picture of Harry S. Cummings, the first African-American city council person elected and served in this very chamber in 1890. But I also am a person who lived 25 years in public housing. I know what it means to have to be in that 20 and 30% AMI, to then being lifted out of poverty and having to rent for the first time ever in my life at market rate, and knowing what it means to actually meet that note, and understanding that these processes are complicated. And that in this climate where people are seeing lower wages and no increases in terms of inflation, when materials are costing more simply to live or to actually operate your business, we have to find a way to meet with the dignity in between. And that's why today I'm offering not only my amendments, but offering an open voice so members of our community can be heard, whether you're a landlord or a tenant, so that we can figure out and problem solve together, similar as we did with the previous bill. We have to find a way to make sure that when a person is seeing that day come, that we know that that is a traumatic time for no matter whoever is present, whether you're at the sheriff's office, the person who's been evicted, or the person who's there on behalf of management to do the eviction. That is hard for everyone that day. That is trauma that you take home, that is secondary, that you bring home to your family, no matter where you are and where you sit. And to those who lose their property in their home that day, you don't know where you're gonna sit in that trauma in that moment. You don't know what supports are gonna be there. At one time, our city had a process where we would dispose of the items and hold them for residents at our DPW stations. We don't have facilities that meet that moment right now. And I'll just be transparent for you. It's something I've been advocating for the longest time. We don't have the facilities to properly house those items right now. So we have to meet the moment. I know that other jurisdictions have passed similar laws, but I also look at learning from our other sisters. Whether you look at the District of Columbia, whether you look at Pennsylvania and others who have this process. We don't have to adopt everything that everyone else has, but we have to be specific to who our residents are, what we know the needs are. We know that some people are being evicted when they're actually sitting in a hospital room. We know people are being evicted while they're at school. We know that some landlords don't simply post the actual notice, right? And we have under Maryland law that there is a presumption that notice was served. So there are things that we can revise. I'll give you an example of a landlord who illegally evicted 27 people in one day in my district. And we found out because that landlord took a picture and covered up the actual numbers of the actual apartments, all on the same floor, and said that that actually was legal notice. It was not. We've had complications where we had to change the notice process because sheriffs were leaving the notices actually on the front door of the property, and if the wind blows by, you never saw that notice being posted there. We are complicated, the system is complicated, and this system breaks so many hearts in so many ways. But that being said, today I offer a path forward. Today, we, after talking to advocates and talking to landlords, we've come up with some amendments that will try to meet in the middle. One is, instead of having 10 days, we'll have 7 business days, period, for tenants to reclaim their belongings, and require that the move on site to remain in Baltimore City, but also be at the choice of the landlord, and be secured against weather and theft, but establishing that reasonable access, including accommodations that people who work and cannot simply show up in the middle of the workday. But we also recognize that we need to place items that people can't leave behind. We also recognize that our public safety officials cannot be there for the entire time, and that there's a small subset of people that lead to public safety risk. And I say that because I've been a council person who's had to advocate for an officer to be present when a domestic violence victim is ending her lease and leaving her spouse. And that officer sit there all day to make sure that she safely gets her items out and that she safely is able to leave. But also, prior to that, arranging with that officer that the weapons in that house be removed before they arrived so that they are not only safe, but get home to their family. This is a balancing act. So I ask that when you give public testimony, think about, let's figure out what a solution is. There's always going to be a curveball around every corner. But I want to make sure that we are trying to address everything possible, because my heart breaks for someone who loses their home and their possessions while they're in the hospital, or someone who goes to work and their possessions are no longer there. As someone who grew up in an age of when people used to set items out on the curb and people would pick through them and take whatever they had, you lost everything. And we've come close to figuring out what that looks like for dignity for our residents. So today, I ask that you be my partners in this work, in that we do 2 simple things. We will not erase or prevent eviction all the way, but we can be able to meaningfully ensure that someone can still recover their birth certificate, that someone can have their tools or uniform for the next day of work, that also a parent still has their children's medication. As I say that because I remember a young person who lost their inhaler, their rescue inhaler, during an eviction. As we know, at one time, those inhalers were not covered by Medicaid fully. They were not covered by health insurance, so that parent had to go deeper into their pocket. But also, we are aware that the pandemic created an opportunity that we all saw humanity, where we all saw losses, and we all understood that there is an economic interest in everything that we do. We can't solve humanity and society's current issues. We didn't cause the tariffs that we have today. We didn't cause people choosing to reinvest their stocks instead of giving workers a fair share of the dividends being made at this time in our economic strait. But what we can do is figure out a way forward. That matters. That is dignity, that is humanity, and after Taubman, it's also our responsibility to get the law right. But also, this bill gives Baltimore an opportunity to do that, to protect due process, to establish clear rules for everyone involved, and to make sure that even during one of the hardest moments of a Baltimore family's life in their experience, our laws do not make the moment unnecessarily harder, but it makes it easier and cleaner for our landlords and that person that day to know what is next. With that being said, I will now move into agency reports, and the first agency will be the Law Department.
Thank you, Chair Torrance. Jeff Hochsteller with the Law Department. As noted in Law's report, we can approve the bill for form and legal sufficiency. However, there were a few recommended amendments, primarily for clarity and to just make sure there wasn't sort of duplicative language with the relevant state law, which actually became effective a little while after the original bill was drafted.
Thank you, Jeff. Sheriff's Office. He's here, he's online.
Today. Apologies there. Thank you, Chair Torrance. Nicholas Blendy from the Baltimore City Sheriff's Office. We stand by our report, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Department of Housing and Economic Development and Community Development. It's community development.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Jason Wright, representing DHCD. We stand behind our favorable bill report.
Thank you. And then the Circuit Court. I know the Circuit Court is online as well.
Apologies, Mr. Chair. I'm just here as an observer.
Thank you. Any questions, colleagues? Vice Chair Ramos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for putting this bill in. It's extremely important for our residents. Eviction is already a traumatic experience. Losing possessions add to that trauma. So I think that the amendment that you put in to reduce the time from 30 days to 7, while not ideal, is a reasonable compromise. So I appreciate you doing that. I did have a question for you, Mr. Chair. There's law amendments, there's your amendments, there's the sheriff's amendments. And then, of course, HABC is asking to be exempt from the bill. So I was curious around which amendments from the various administrations you're taking into yours, or do we still need to have a consolidated set of amendments?
We are working on a consolidated amount of amendments
Okay.
because I know that MHA has offered some amendments, and today there might be other ideas offered here. That's why I'm saying that we're open to this discussion, because I'm just being transparent with colleagues. I am not Jesus. I am not the law. I think that we need to have conversations about what does it look like now, and I'm just being transparent. We have some questions that we have in terms of the sheriff's department, because that's a question that we have to ask for the next administration of the sheriff about how they would like to handle some of the processes. So there's much to be worked out. But in addition to that, there's also questions that we had in terms of calls for service from BPD that we're working out too, in terms of if there is a call for service during reclamation, what does that look like? How do people treat it? In addition to that, there's also advocacy that I'm doing on my part to see if we can have actual like shipping containers available so that people's items can be put into those containers, because while a person may have their reclamation period, they still may not have a place to place those items. And we have in the past as a city offered a storage location for them to do it. So there's things that we need to work out, but also that's why I'm saying that we're gonna keep dignity at the heart of the policy, because there's ways that we can problem solve together. But what we did is that we did take it from 10 actual days down to 7 business days, but provided and aligned with the District of Columbia, which allows persons to reclaim the items between 8 and 6 from having conversations with landlords who have actual staff on site. That made sense for them through Monday through Friday. And then a person can put in a request for if they wanted to reclaim on Saturday. But as soon as they open the door, start touching the items, they have 24 hours to actually get the items out of the property, right? So we try to balance the tier, understanding that you may get a U-Haul on Tuesday, and that may be the 3rd day. So, and you start on that Tuesday, by Wednesday, things have to be out of the actual facility, which is fair because it's 24 hours. So we try to pair it. I've had conversations with colleagues from Pennsylvania and colleagues from DC about the law, but in addition to that, sorry, HABC, I don't think I'm going to exempt you because your colleagues in DC and Pennsylvania do it already. So we can learn how they handle that with the HUD process in terms of when does turnover happen with HUD. Just being transparent in the public sphere that there are requirements by HUD in which a property has to be turned over by either by HABC staff or by their contractors. So we have to think about what does that look like logistically for them. But I'm not exempting them because we as government should also be impacted as well. And that's why I'm saying I'm being fair and balanced. I'm being judge even-handed right now, but if we got it right in DC, if we got it right in Pennsylvania, HABC can get it right here too.
Thank you.
Hopefully that answers your questions.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilman Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, the question I have is, have you considered like additional protection or assistance specifically for small landlords who have already experienced months of unpaid rent? I do know some personally that have experienced those situations where mortgage is still due. They're hit with many fines. Those fines are still due. But is there going to be a reasonable opportunity while we still, guarantee tenants the opportunity to retrieve their belongings? Are we going to make sure, is there any kind of thing in the amendments that's basically telling us that those small landlords also have that opportunity, those that have been faced with unpaid rent.
So, Councilman, generally speaking, calls for service for anything related to landlord-tenant law is between Code 55 or 79. So I have BPD evaluating what those calls look like and what they have triaged them for. The reason why is because at one time, the mayor's office was looking into how to treat those. And looking at where we are and just being transparent with you, we can't just assume that a person is going to be we just can't assume that a person is going to be hostile at that moment. So that becomes a question. And then as someone who has been previously evicted as a child and then seeing evictions take place anyway, a sheriff's officer is only there when the eviction even just starts and they leave. So we have to have a conversation with our public safety officials on how we treat this, even with the current manpower that we do have. I think that's one end of it, but also, that's one end of it, but we have to, and I'm sorry, but I'm waiting for the data. I like to be data driven because if it was at one time 42 calls last year for landlord-tenant issues for exactly on eviction day outside of the sheriff's department, then that's a conversation that we have. It's not like it's not hundreds of calls. So we need to be mindful where our current manpower is too. Blanchard.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question might be for the sheriff's office. I wouldn't be surprised if no one's got a good answer to it. Do we have any idea of the number of evictions, say like in the past year, or say just in 2025, that led to people losing their possessions? Like, does anyone have a sense of that? Is that tracked anywhere?
So it's Nicholas Bundy from the sheriff's office. That's not a thing that would be tracked, and the reason why is the law as it's currently, enforced is that all personal property is deemed abandoned by the tenant at the time the sheriff's deputy serves the warrant of restitution, and that's not a thing that we track. We don't have, we just track if the tenant was present, the tenant was not present, and then we close and serve the warrant. But we have not, as a matter of practice, like turned our body worn cameras on and then written a report about what types of belongings.
No worries, Mr. Plenty. That's helpful, and I'm not surprised or
it's a great question.
I was just curious on that one. I'm supportive of the bill. I also am somewhat interested in the idea that the chair had alluded to earlier about the feasibility of doing something in some point in the future related to bringing back the DPW version of this, or having some way of streamlining this process. And I was curious as to what the scale of what we would be talking about would be.
Yeah, and that's a part of the conversation too, because if we're going to zero waste, one of the things that is filling up our landfill is furniture and other items that people are illegally dumping anyway. So if we're able to remove those items from the waste stream in terms of legal dumping and have them available for people, that allows someone a legitimate opportunity for a second chance. So it's just, there's ways that we can problem solve and have conversations about it. And it's something that we don't have. That's why we're doing BOLIs in other facilities now. The facilities that we had these items stored in had rat infestation. Who would want property that has rats crawl over it, right? Or there was water seeping into the actual facility. So that basically ruins the property and we have to discard it. But there are organizations who give second chance furniture out to people who are experiencing not only homelessness, but starting over. So we can work together in creating that pipeline, but that's also a part of our zero waste conversation with the administration too. Councilman Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I just want to thank you and everyone who worked hard on this bill with the amendments to kind of find a middle ground where we can continue to protect our residents, but not feel like we're shifting the burden over to, landlords. But with that said, just a quick question was for the sheriff's office. Well, it's in regards to the sheriff's office comments. They mentioned how, I guess with state law, things aren't uniformed, whether or not it's, failure to pay rent or tenant holdover or breach of lease. Will this bill kind of uniform some of those things?
That was the issue that we ran through when we were doing it because there was no uniformity.
Yeah.
So we wanted to uniformly do everything but the foreclosure proceedings. The reason why is because 30 days here, 30 days there. But if we create like a streamlined process that it's 7 days here, and then this is the process, and then it's clear in terms of what notice is, that allows everyone to have the same rules, and it's not repeating the wheel, because I've seen the pamphlet that the sheriff's office gives out, and I gotta flip through it to make sure, like, hey, was your eviction justified under this situation because you're a tenant holdover? And then there was the other question about squatters, and then the fact that as long as you have a writ, no one can squat. We can actually call BPD in and escort them right back out, right? So there's this need to streamline it so that not only we have a clear process, but it's not overly regulating.
Yeah, and which kind of leads me to my second question, just being clear on the education piece. I know when these laws changed, oftentimes, not only the renters, but even the landlords don't even know what some of the new laws are. Just want to make it clear on who will take the lead on educating the public on what some of the new standards are, because I know the courts play a role, the sheriff's plays a role, even the city plays a role, and sometimes when it isn't clear on who's going to provide that education piece, often people are waiting for the next person to kind of inform the general public.
And it's hard because we don't even have judges who are enforcing the fact that if you don't have a rental license, you shouldn't be collecting rent and you should pay the rent back to someone else, right? And that is something that we haven't had that real conversation, because even though that was actually in the law, those are things that we have to really think through in terms of like fixing the process. Because if it's not being acted upon, we can't tell the circuit court to do that thing. Then we need to find another vehicle to make sure that, like, if a person doesn't have a rental license, how are you renting, right? Is that a citation that we issue for, rather than just telling you to give the person rent back because you're not going to give it back to them? There's a lot of, I think wholeheartedly this is a step for us to start streamlining the process, but I think that we have to go back to the table about like what makes sense in terms of like just rental licensing law in the city. That's why we have Councilwoman Ramos's bill, because there's a lot of things that we thought should happen were not happening.
And Mr. Chair, I can briefly address, if you'll allow, which is what has been authorized by state law. The sheriff is required at the time it serves the warrant of restitution, aka lets the eviction get conducted, to check for those notices. And because the General Assembly has authorized this body to choose anywhere between 4 and 14 days as the minimum amount of notice the landlord's required to do, that means that as long as this body picks dates that fit within that parameter, we're required to enforce that. So that would be us that would educate the landlords, and the landlords have a significant interest in making sure that they understand what they're doing, because they typically don't like to have delayed evictions, if certainly not for their own failure to notify the tenants. And if it's brought to our attention that they have not complied with the due process, we postpone the eviction at the door.
Perfect. Chief Blendy, can you walk us through the eviction process from the sheriff's standpoint? Because what I want to make sure is that we understand what the current process is, because I think your pamphlet's 30 pages in terms of explaining what
It's not, as you, Mr. Chair, it's not for the faint of heart or for those playing at the law. It is it is a conflict situation, which is why there is a law enforcement officer with a badge and a gun who conducts it, and it is significantly legally complex. But real briefly, there is a two-step. So you mentioned squatters. I'm going to take that out right of the gate. Those do not apply. There is no landlord-tenant relationship in a squatter situation. That's called wrongful detainer, and that's not dealt with here. That's not going to be altered at all. the three main ways that you have a cause of action, as the lawyers understand, for an eviction is summary ejectment for failure to pay rent. That is far and away the most typical. That means, fundamentally you haven't kept up with your rent. There's tenant holding over, which is when there is a landlord-tenant relationship, and there was a written lease for a term, and that term has ended. You are now a tenant holding over, and that means, it defaults to month, basically, under state law, unless it's specified in the lease otherwise. And then you have to give 60 days notice if you want to get someone out of your premises under a tenant holding over situation. And then there's breach of lease, which is when a tenant breaches some other term of the lease, typically making waste or violating the state and local laws with criminal activity, doing dangerous activities that are the place is not zoned for. If you're operating a commercial business, as a residential lease is another example. No matter which of those three, if the landlord files that action, she goes in front of a judge, and then the judge will make a determination as to whether or not the landlord wins the court case. If there's a judgment granted in favor of the landlord, then, and at the beginning of all this, I'll say that the sheriff posts the initial notice for that court hearing. And that's set by state law. I forgot to mention the role that we play in it. So when you file the court case, the sheriff is the one who posts the notice and sends the mailing of your court date, and it has information that's required. Then if you go to court, you get your judgment as the landlord. The second step is the actual eviction, and that's when you file for a warrant of restitution, and that's where the landlord gets the interest and property back, because when you give a tenant place, you're granting them possession is the legal term, and you're taking the possession right back as the landlord. There is a notice requirement. There is a 10-day wait, I think, for, if I'm remembering correctly, for before you can file for the warrant. Don't hold me to it. It might be 14. And then when you file for the warrant, and the warrant is issued to you by the district court, then you, the landlord, call the sheriff to schedule the date of eviction. The sheriff controls the date of the eviction, and there's about 60 days that you have to take action before you're, it is 60. Within 60 days, you must take action on the warrant that the court issues you, which is to say you have to try to schedule the eviction with the landlord. The landlord has to schedule the eviction with the sheriff's office. So when the landlord calls, the sheriff's office will give you a date, and at that time, you are if you use our online process, your thing pops up that says you must give notice of the personal property being risked and abandoned in accordance with the existing ordinance that you guys are talking about changing right now. So when that happens, you get your date. There is no eviction happening right now that's scheduled within 14 days from the first time that you have it, unless there's some extremely public safety urgent circumstances that were brought to our attention. That would be the only reason. But in the ordinary course of business, and certainly for all failure to pay rents, you're getting a date that's probably somewhere between 21 to 28 days out currently. And then you get your date. You are therefore then required to post notice one time and mail notice to your tenant according with the current statute that they are at risk to lose their personal property if they don't clear it out by the day of the eviction. If there is no delay or weather event, that date doesn't change, the sheriff's deputy shows up, knocks on the door. If the tenant's already moved out, because the landlord or her representative is there, we conduct it as canceled, tenant not present. If that has not been confirmed by the landlord, we'll move forward with the eviction. And then we will most times the tenant's not there, but in those moments that the tenant is there, the deputy will read off the warrant, will ask questions. The tenant has the opportunity to pay and stay if it's still a redeemable failure to pay eviction, meaning if they can produce the amount that's on the writ, the deputy will cancel the eviction, and the landlord is required by law to take that money. They can't say, well, I've changed my mind. But if they do not redeem the possession right there, then the eviction moves forward, and the deputy either typically there's very little times that there's a force needed or law enforcement force needed. They'll give a tenant a human dignity amount of time to clean things out that's reasonable, and then they'll observe as the landlord changes the locks, and then the eviction will be concluded. And that is the messy business of evictions that you were speaking of earlier, Mr. Chairman. Do you have any questions, or your colleagues have questions?
Colleagues, any questions? Sorry to give y'all that overview, but just want to make sure we level set. I think that concludes agency reports. Any questions or comments before I move to public testimony? Oh, I'm sorry, HABC, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. HABC did submit a revised testimony regarding this bill with amendments. What we basically did was we walked through, and I have copies for the members of the committee and other council members that are here. Unfortunately, it was uploaded a little late. We basically went through the lease termination process for HABC, what would it mean to store belongings in the HABC unit. The amendment that HABC is basically requesting is that the reclamation period be made to be 3 business days during regular business hours rather than the proposed 10 days or up to 30 days. We're requesting this reduction in the reclamation period because of the ample notice and opportunity to cure that HABC gives to our residents who are facing eviction, as well as the additional costs, administrative burden, and delay in housing our waitlist applicants that any reclamation period would cause. I'm happy to share copies with the committee if that's okay, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Yes. Any questions, colleagues? Councilman Jones.
Just really quick, I believe in the testimony, I remember reading it stated something about HABC not being able to use federal dollars to pay for holding properties. Is there a way around that, or just kind of what is the workaround now? Because I was just thinking of the challenge that will present.
We haven't figured out how we're gonna make it work, but like Chairman Torres mentioned, our colleagues in DC and Pennsylvania, they figured it out. So we have begun those conversations to figure out how they're able to get around that requirement that you can't use federal funds to hold or store people's personal property.
Okay, well, look, if there's a will, there's a way. Glad to hear that. Thank you. That's all I need to know.
Thank you.
Yeah, Councilman Jones, me and HABC had a hard conversation about a learning period in terms of learning from our colleagues, what's best practices. So I will, to their credit, they have been talking to their colleagues about what best practices are, because a number of their colleagues do have both public-private partnerships where they have to do this at too. So what we can learn from them could help us generally with the bill too. So they've been helpful with getting more information.
Thanks.
All right, with that being said, we will now move into public testimony unless there's anything else from the agencies or council members. Sorry, someone stole my papers. With that being now, we're now moving to public testimony. You will have a hard 2 minutes. I recognize that we are all here, and by the capacity of this chamber, there are at least 50 of you here tonight. So that gives me a long time to be here with you all, and I appreciate you for being here. That's over 2 hours. So I just want to be clear that it's a hard 2 minutes. You will get the warning from the lights that are at the rostrum. And then it beeps, so you'll know when it beeps. And we're keeping track of it here. With that being said, our first person will be Aaron Greenfield from Maryland Housing Association.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Aaron Greenfield on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. In respectful opposition to this bill, we represent in Baltimore City alone more than 34,000 rental homes and more than 200 apartment communities. Our major opposition concerns the reclamation period. In Todman, the court made clear that Baltimore City could address its concerns by providing additional notice to tenants or by allowing a reclamation period even as short as a few hours. In other words, the court did not require Baltimore City to establish a 7 business day reclamation period with an extension permitted by the district court. And as you heard from the Assistant Sheriff Blendy, his description of the process demonstrates all the safeguards in place to satisfy and ensure that the tenants get notice. We are all for additional notice, have no problem with it, but the reclamation period delays a housing provider's ability to clean, repair, prepare, and re-rent a unit after an eviction, just like you heard from HABC. We have the same exact concerns. This means additional vacancy time. It means that a property, there are maintenance costs, there's a loss of rental income for the housing provider. And just put this in context, it's 123 days on average from a filing of a failure to pay rent to an eviction. That's 4 months of a housing provider not being paid for use of their property. The housing provider needs to be able to recover that property and begin making it available to another resident as quickly as possible. Those costs ultimately have to be absorbed somewhere, and they can contribute to higher rents. You will find that if you pass this bill with the reclamation period, you will see higher rents in Baltimore City. This legislation would also make Baltimore City an outlier in Maryland because it would be the only jurisdiction in the state with a reclamation period of any sort. Is that my 2 minutes? Wow. Okay. There's no need to be disrespectful.
Okay. Let's keep it calm, everybody, okay? Next, we will head, I think this is Judson Kerr with Southern Management. Excuse me if I destroy your first name. I just want to make sure.
Which button?
You're fine.
We're
It's
good?
still on. It's red.
Don't touch it again? Okay. Yeah, I've been called far worse than Judson. So, thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman Torrance. My name is Judson. All right. My name is Judson Kerr, and I'm the proud manager of the Atrium Apartments in District 11 and Roland Ridge Apartment Homes in District 6. In addition to my professional role, I am also a rental property owner in District 6, giving me firsthand understanding of the challenges housing providers of all sizes face in Baltimore City. Southern Management owns 11 apartment communities in Baltimore City where we proudly house more than 5,000 Baltimore residents. The vast majority of our Baltimore communities are workforce housing, meaning our rent structure supports residents earning less than 60% of the area median income. I'm here today to share significant concerns with Council Bill 250087, eviction chattels time to reclamation, and ask that you reconsider this bill in light of the unintended consequences. Though this bill will have significant financial and other ramifications for housing providers, there are amendments that can help mitigate those challenges. Evictions are a last resort in property management, both because of the costs associated with turning over an apartment for reoccupancy, the risk of vacancy loss, and the uncertainty and instability that comes with losing a resident. Under the proposed bill, Southern Management and other housing providers could lose up to additional 2 months of income, potentially more, it takes at least a week to turn over a well-maintained apartment for a new resident. I would also, as my time is winding up, please urge you to consider our teams, their safety, and the substantial economic losses housing providers already incur throughout the eviction process. The safety piece is incredibly critical to me because my team members have encountered all sorts of things in the apartment after an eviction, from drug paraphernalia to guns. I've even seen a loaded crossbow. And so my concern is for our team members along with the former residents. Thank you for your time.
And then I have Jim Johnson next.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the council. My name is Jim Johnson, former police chief, Baltimore County, with over 45 years of public safety experience. I'm currently the president of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. I want to make it clear from the very beginning, not all actual evictions result in violence or are aggravated. However, it's common. It's common. The danger to tenants, employees, and public safety personnel exists. I'm not going to read them, but across America, if you do some searching, you'll find law enforcement officers killed this year and every year for the last several at eviction sites, along with tenants and other individuals. The Sheriff's Department serves these lock and leaves processes, highly trained, equipped, professionals in de-escalation, a plethora of resources at their disposal to call, and the police department will come instantly to their aid and help. We expect a 19-year-old to process the reclamation, to allow and oversee the individual back in. Keep in mind, many of these are breach of lease cases where other tenants in the building brought the action that resulted in the breach of lease. Now we're reintroducing the tenants back into the structure. In many cases, the Sheriff's Department won't be in a position to respond if they're needed. That'll fall back on the police department, a department that's already 600 officers down, according to the latest reports. Who is responsible for the property left behind? The bill says secure location. What does that mean? Apartment, am I to guard it with armed personnel? By the way, the city just passed a bill that increases armed guard services in the city of Baltimore, increasing the cost to multi-housing owners. The reclamation policy expectations.
My former professor, Katie Davis.
Good evening, council members. I'm Katie Davis, the director of the Courtroom Advocacy Project at Pro Bono Resource Center of Maryland, a Baltimore City resident, and also a former adjunct law professor. I'm here both in my professional and personal capacity to ask for a favorable report. In our Courtroom Advocacy Project, we provide legal assistance for low-income tenants facing eviction. Though our goal is always to help clients avoid eviction, and we are not always successful, we've seen the devastation and trauma that follow an eviction, particularly one paired with the loss of property. Before I share a quick client story, I want to highlight some written testimony filed by a colleague of mine at University of Baltimore Law School. Colin Sarger, he couldn't be here tonight, but Colin Sarger, he's a constitutional law professor, and he detailed in his testimony how and why the City Council must pass this legislation in order to address the Todman decision. In short, the Fourth Circuit was clear that in order to avoid violating the Fourth Amendment's prohibition on taking property without due process, the city must require not just notice that the property will be deemed abandoned, as we do, but also a meaningful opportunity to be heard. In other words, due process requires that a tenant be given a mechanism through which they can contest the improper taking after the fact or before it's actually deemed abandoned. They need to be able to rebut the presumption that they've abandoned their property or to contest any error or mistake. If they can't, then their right to due process has been violated. The court pointed out that a reclamation period would do just that, and that's why this legislation is so vital. Legality aside, I want to quickly, if I have time, relay an experience of one of our clients, a 74-year-old woman who fell behind on her rent a couple of years ago by helping her granddaughter avoid homelessness. Our staff was working with her to help her find rental assistance and was actually on the phone with her one day when she heard a large banging at the door. The sheriff was there evicting her. So our staff attorney could only listen as Ms. Jones ran up and down the stairs, gathering her documents, her wallet, some sentimental items, and frantically looking for everything she needed. Thank you for your time.
I believe this is Sunny Desai. Sunny Desai.
Good evening. My name is Sunny Desai. I'm a tenant attorney, have been for 15 years. I was a housing attorney in Maryland for a long time, working down the street at Maryland Legal Aid, where I managed a team of tenant attorneys, saw evictions, was in court every single day. Now, I'm an attorney doing the same work, but in Washington, D.C., so I'd like to tell you all about how the process works there. Once an eviction judgment has been issued, the marshals there schedule an eviction. When they post a notice about when they will come out, they come out. The landlords change the locks with the marshals there. The person in the apartment is asked to leave. And then they have 7 days if they want to schedule a time to retrieve their property. No one is standing guard 24/7. I understand the bill here has language about a secure location. A locked apartment is quite secure. We just set up a time with the landlord to come back when our clients go back inside and get what they need. They're not trying to get large furniture, television, jewelry. Our clients are of very little means. Usually what my clients want are photographs, medicine, family heirlooms that are irreplaceable. If those get lost, their eviction is already compounded. I want to address a couple of concerns that were raised in earlier testimony. One is this adds time to the eviction process. Frankly, that may be true, but that has to be weighed against the harm that's done to folks that are being evicted. And I think the balance lands more on the side of the tenants whose lives are already ruined, and now we're compounding the problem. And the other issue is the secure location part. Again, a locked apartment is plenty secure. There's no need to have somebody out protecting the property. So thank you. There's additional client testimony in my written testimony. I hope you'll take the time to read it.
Thank you. Eddie Blackstone, come on down, sir.
Hello, hello. Good evening. My name is Eddie Blackstone. I'm the Baltimore organizer with the Community Development Network of Maryland. But tonight, I'm speaking as somebody born and raised in Baltimore City who knows what eviction actually feels like. I was a homeless child in this city more than once. So when we talk about eviction, I don't picture a court document. I remember the confusion. I remember having to leave. I remember things getting lost because when your family is trying to figure out where you're sleeping that night, nobody's talking about whether the birth certificates are in the right folder. I lost mine. I lost my social security card. A family heirloom, 200 years has been in my family. I found it in a pawn shop afterwards. And people might say, well, you can replace those. Yeah, you can, but try replacing them when you don't have a stable address. Try replacing documents when you need one document just to get access to another one. Try worrying about paperwork when your family is worried about where you're gonna sleep. I later became an educator, and what hurt is seeing the same struggle flow down to another generation. I saw children coming into classrooms dealing with housing instability, moving from place to place, exhausted and carrying problems much bigger than anything we were teaching that day. Sometimes I look at those children and I saw myself. And somebody could easily look at me today and say, well, you survived, you did fine, but everybody doesn't. And surviving something should never be our standard for whether that thing is acceptable. We talk about Maslow's hierarchy of needs. The first level is basic physiological needs: food, water, shelter, clothing, and sleep. These are things that a human needs before we seriously start thinking about stability, education, employment, or reaching their potential. Not everybody in this country starts with those things in abundance. Some people start life already fighting for level 1. So why should we take people who already don't have enough and take even more from them? We use this clean word, chattels, but there's nothing clean about eviction. Those chattels are clothes, a mattress, your child's uniform, your grandmother's pictures, your birth certificate, your social security card. These things that literally make you human. CDN strongly supports this bill, but I'm asking you personally, as somebody who was born and raised in Baltimore City and knows what this is like, to support this bill.
We're on to 2 minutes. I just want to remind everybody, the button's there for a reason, right? So that we can all get out of here on time and be respectful of each other's time. Next, we'll have Tiffany Richardson.
Good evening, City Council members. I want to say a special thank you to the council person where I live, Councilman Ryan Dorsey, and where I work, Councilman Mark Conway, and the sole council person that responded to my consensual concerns, Councilwoman Ramos. Wow. My name is Tiffany Richardson. I'm a Baltimore City landlord. I have worked as a leasing professional, a community manager. Now I'm an equivalent of a regional manager role. I respectfully, personally, and professionally am against this bill for several reasons. I do appreciate the amendments for the bill, but respectfully, in addition to the safety issues, one of my concerns is about the urban blight that will return with a vengeance when this bill, if and when this bill passes. Baltimore City will become less desirable, less clean. This will drive down property values. It will increase already existing rodent and insect issues. None of these effects are desirable, but will be the unintended consequences if this bill is passed. Illegal dumping will spiral out of control, and let's be honest, less reputable property owners and operators without the ways and means to store abandoned chattel will simply look for ways to remove the property. As the gentleman, the attorney that spoke before me stated, oftentimes those that are evicted, they only get things that, they essentially need. They're not getting the bulk furniture. Let's be honest, what are the landlords gonna do with these things? As it stands now, it's considered abandoned property that we have to properly dispose of. Are all landlords gonna do that? No. These items are gonna end up in strip malls, dumpsters, fields, creeks, apartment tracks, dumpsters, and so forth. We know this will be the case because we witnessed this in the years before 2007, when the existing abandoned property chattel laws went into effect with great success in Baltimore City. Baltimore City is the envy of the state of how abandoned property chattels are currently handled. Thank you all.
Yes, next we have, I believe it's Jesse Blumberg, sorry.
Hi, council members. Thank you very much for all your efforts. I am a landlord in Baltimore City, city resident. Most of my properties are in the first district and some in Councilwoman Ramos's district. In general, I would say I've been through eviction as a landlord, and as a landlord, I didn't want to evict my tenant at all. Never wanted to come to that, struggle through, work payment plans out. Remember, landlords are business owners. I live here. I pay taxes here. We have to pay mortgages. We have to pay real estate taxes that continue to go up and up and up. Water bills, guess what? Tenant didn't pay the water bill. It's a huge financial burden for a landlord. And we, on the face of it, I think the bill has a lot of merit. Like someone losing their house, like absolutely, they don't want to lose their stuff. But I would call on the city of Baltimore to come up with a process where we can safely do what you're all trying to achieve, right? Like, what's gonna happen when the stuff's left in the house? What's gonna happen if someone breaks back in the house to get their stuff? What happens when we, we need a prescribed time? Like, do we as landlords get some kind of assistance from DPW to dispose of all this stuff? Because I can tell you, when you have to take it to the dump, you're refused, or you have to call bulk hauler. I mean, do we need any more illegal dumping in the city? Like, I have been working to clean it up in the neighborhoods that I build in as a contractor and a real estate agent. So I would just ask that we consider these things, as you work through the bill through its paces, and offer some assistance to landlords in order to comply with this bill and help tenants get their stuff back securely and safely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It's Andrea with no last name. Is there Andrea here with no last name? But also no, Andrea, you have to say your last name for the
Andrea
record.
Soto.
Andrea.
Hi, good evening. My name is Andrea. I'm 28 years old, a local Baltimorean. I'm a realtor, a small owner of a property management company that has managed over 30 units both in the West and East Baltimore area. I've assisted landlords through rental licensing, permitting, and eviction processing. This year I did what I do for my clients, and I became a first-time housing provider and homeowner in District 6. I purchased my home, a duplex, to try my hand at home hacking. You live in one unit, you rent out the other. To pay your mortgage. I've done evictions for landlords not out of desire, but out of necessity of housing providers that do not have the money to cover someone else's cost of living anymore. I believe that the city does a really good job of protecting its tenants. But what about the housing providers, the ones that actually provide the housing? What if there is no more housing for them if they lose it with those extra weeks that you want to give them, besides putting them in harm's way? New generation of investors like myself trying to house hack with tenants that live with them, above them, beside them, where they personally live. I paid $2,011 for my mortgage. My tenant pays 2/3 of my mortgage, and I cover the water bill for the both of us, along with my own personal needs like insurance, BG, cell phone, all that good stuff. But what if I didn't receive that income? What if I could no longer make those payments? Day 45, notice of intent to foreclose. 45 days after your first missed payment before mortgage companies can legally file foreclosure action in court. Day 90, docket, court filing. The official start date of a court foreclosure process is you are 90 days behind, leaves you 90 days behind. Normally the eviction process with all things going well takes about 2 months if everything goes well. My time isn't finishing, but thank you for your time.
We're good. Ned Carey.
Council Chairman, council members, thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Ned Carey, and I'm a small landlord. I get it. You want to have compassion for tenants. And Chairman, I could see your passion as your opening comments. I have compassion for my tenants too. I've often forgiven water bills that were past due. I've done workout payments. I've delayed evictions. So I get the compassion. Here's what I don't get. Where's the compassion for the landlord? See, we're the victim here. We have been done wrong by the tenant to the tune of 4 months' rent on average by the bigger landlord than me that has the stats. That's $6,000 typically. I'm out $6,000 because of this tenant, and yet you don't want to show me the compassion. You're not only not showing me the compassion, frankly, you're kicking me in the teeth. You're saying, Mr. Landlord, this person has harmed you. We're going to take something from you to help the person that harmed you. That's not compassion. Is that truly compassion? My second point, reading through this, there's up to 7,000 evictions a year in Baltimore. That's tragic. But it's not because of landlords. It's because tenants that didn't pay. Here's what I want you to think about. 7,000 evictions. That's 7,000 potential lawsuits against the city for an illegal taking of property for 10 days. Think about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Kathy Howard.
Good afternoon. I'm Kathy Howard. I'm the
the regional I represent Regional Management, Inc. We have been here for over 60 years in our units for our very great tenants. I would suggest to you, I've been doing this for about 40 years, and I can tell you that there's a lot of goodness in this bill, but I am looking forward to having some time to have additional information giving up and to do some of the things that you had suggested when you began your this hearing. We would like very much to be in the same ward with you when we are trying to figure out how to do a lot of the stuff that we want, that this bill is trying to do. One of the things I think that everybody is concerned about is the reclamation period. And I think that we really need to focus on that. I was on back in, I won't tell you how old I was, but we have tried to do this several times, and it has always been something that we should continue to try to do in order to make all of this work for both the tenant and the landlords. And I would suggest that you think about that, and please get a task force or something along those lines in order to make sure that we have done everything we should be possibly doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe this is Jaron Williams. Is there a Jaron Williams? Oh.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jaron Williams, and I'm here today representing Young, Gifted, and Green, and I'm also the founder of Trust, a Baltimore-based initiative focused on environmental justice, transportation equity, and community engagement. I'm here to ask for a favorable report on Council Bill 250087. I'm born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, specifically the Bel Air Edison area. And beyond my community work, I also understand personally how stressful and overwhelming the eviction process can be. You're trying to figure out where you're going to sleep, how you're going to get to work, what happens with your children, how you're going to recover financially. You should not have to worry about immediately losing everything. Under Baltimore's current process, belongings left in a home at the time of an eviction can effectively be treated as abandoned. The bill changed that by giving tenants something very basic, and that's just time. I also want to speak to this from an environmental justice perspective. Through my work with Young, Gifted, and Green, I've learned that environmental justice isn't just about lead and air pollution. It's about who carries the burden of the systems that fail in our communities. When someone's furniture, mattress, clothing, and other household possessions are discarded after an eviction, those belongings don't simply disappear. They can end up on sidewalks and alleys around vacant properties, also an illegal dumping in our neighborhoods. So this is not just a housing issue. This is a sanitation issue, a waste issue, a neighborhood quality of life issue, and an environmental justice issue. We can recognize that there's a legal process for eviction while still recognizing the humanity of the person being evicted. So a court order may determine who has possession of a home, but it should not determine whether someone gets to keep their most prized possessions, medication, things that belong to children, as well as pieces of their life that they cannot replace. So losing your home should not mean losing everything that you own. So on behalf of Young, Gifted, and Green, and through the environmental justice perspective that I bring through Trust, I respectfully urge a favorable report on Council Bill 250087. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Angela Cole.
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Chair, committee members, thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Angela Cole. I am a mother, a Baltimore native, a community leader, and today I'm here representing Young, Gifted, and Green. We strongly support Council Bill 250087, the Tenant Possessions Recovery Act. Evictions don't just remove families from their homes. They take their personal belongings, their stability, and their ability to recover. In our work, we see how losing essential items like important documents, life-saving medications, children's keepsakes, school uniforms, and family photos further families into crisis mode. No one should lose everything they own simply because they fell behind on rent. When families are forced to start over with nothing, they are heavily dependent on emergency resources and donations that are already stretched thin and basically underfunded, as we already know. This bill provides a human-centered approach that is practical and gives renters a fair chance to reclaim their possessions. The TRPA will provide renters 14 days notice of the eviction date and allow 10 days to reclaim belongings or 30 days with storage. This approach is standard in many states and cities across the country. Baltimore is behind, and as the federal courts ruled in Taubman versus the mayor and city council of Baltimore, our current process is unconstitutional. TPRA also helps reduce illegal dumping, as previously stated. It's also an issue that Young, Gifted, and Green has been working and fighting for years. When landlords discard tenants' belongings, it contributes to the neighborhood blight, environmental harm, allowing renters to retrieve their possessions, supports cleaner and safer communities. For these reasons, Young, Gifted, and Green urges a favorable report on the Tenant Possessions Recovery Act. This bill will restore dignity, protect families, and bring Baltimore in line with the Constitution.
Remember the button, friends. We next have David Wheaton.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name is David Wheaton. I'm an attorney with the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, founded by Baltimore's own Thurgood Marshall in 1940. LDF is the nation's premier racial justice legal organization. And since our inception, LDF has worked to increase fair housing opportunities for Black communities. I'm here testifying in support of the Baltimore TPRA because of the impact the bill will have on low-income Black Baltimore families. Evictions in Baltimore have a disproportionate impact on Black Baltimore residents. An analysis from LDF showed that Baltimore zip codes with a higher percentage of Black renters face a significant higher rate of filings of warrants of restitution and executed evictions. A 10 percentage point increase in the percent of Black renters in a zip code is associated with a 24% increase in the rate of executed evictions. The crisis happening with evictions is a racial justice issue, and the consequences of those evictions disproportionately hurt Black Baltimore residents. This results in a disproportionate loss in personal property and household goods in Black communities. I also want to use some of my time to refute what some of the things you've maybe heard from some of the landlord organizations. One is that there would be an increased cost or increased rent when it comes to adding a reclamation period. There is no research that shows that a jurisdiction with a reclamation period has higher rents. West Virginia has a reclamation period. Alabama has a reclamation period of 14 days, double what we're going to do here. And those places have significantly less rents than what we have here in Baltimore. If landlords in Alabama and landlords in West Virginia can deal with reclamation period, I'm sure the landlords here in Baltimore can also deal with reclamation period as well. Also, some opponents of tenant protections have argued that increased tenant protections like the ones in this legislation would harm Black communities by studying Black wealth or hurting Black landlords. Let us be clear, again, there have been no studies to support this claim. What research does show is that Black renters are disproportionately harmed by the evictions and the consequences that come with those evictions. We ask for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Indigo Knoll.
Thank you for your time today. My name is Indigo. I reside in Councilman Bullock's district. I was evicted in January of 2024. I don't think this is a controversial bill. I think anyone respecting the humanity of tenants knows losing everything when you're evicted is compounding unnecessary harms. I want to use my time today to draw attention to a pattern I noticed with my landlord. During my 10-year tenancy, my landlord regularly refused to maintenance essential appliances. When our refrigerator stopped working and our washing machine broke, we were forced to replace those using almost $1,000 of our own money. We did this assuming that when we left, we would be taking these appliances with us. When the Langfords evicted us in retaliation for requesting maintenance, they locked us out of the elevator, not only on the day of the eviction, but in the weeks leading up to this. This made it impossible for us to take our things with us unless we wanted to drag them down 10 flights of stairs. You tried dragging a refrigerator down 10 flights of stairs. Tell me how that goes. They knew we would not be able to come back later and those appliances would become theirs. They planned on this. They evicted dozens of tenants in a similar manner, ultimately robbing almost 50 people while forcing out the tenants who were just asking them to make the building safe and habitable. When you allow tenants to be kicked out with no chance to get their things, you incentivize this type of behavior in landlords, compounding harm already being done to tenants. You tell landlords it's financially beneficial to stop maintenance and to evict tenants who have invested in improvements in our homes. You tell landlords it's okay to steal from us. Because of this, I urge a favorable vote on this protective legislation. It's bare minimum to ensure people aren't being further victimized by predatory landlords while already being displaced. Theft from tenants should not be a viable business model. I would like to add that I was a tenant advocate when I was evicted. I knew how to check to see if my eviction was coming up. I knew how long it took. I never received any notice. I was entirely unprepared when the deputies knocked on my bedroom door at 9 a.m., and I was told I had 5 minutes to grab what I could carry. If I didn't even have a reasonable heads up with all my experience and connections and privilege, how could a normal person be expected to fare better? Thank you.
Thank you. We now have Ashley Nicole Sims.
Hello, everyone sitting at the front. My name is Ashley Nicole Sims. I'm a resident of Baltimore City and also a former resident of Baltimore City Public Housing, which me and my 6 kids were evicted from. An entity that I thought was for the people and the children as well, which I quickly found out that they were not, especially since all 7 years that I had been there, I had been in compliance with every inspection, every pest control, you name it, I was in compliance with it, which I have a good standing with some of the people at the leasing office who still to this day are trying to help me. But I quickly found out that there are a lot of people there, the higher ups, that are not for people that have children and for people that are experiencing a tough time or just getting on their feet trying to make their way in life. I had secured a grant with United Way, the community center for children, people that had children in Baltimore City, which I have 6, and still public housing refused to take that payment. So I went and secured a lawyer. The mayor's office, as well as some of the officials and public housing, came to the table because of me, because I made so much noise because of the type of tenant that I was while I was there, and yet still public housing refused to accept that payment and evicted me and my kids. And just like the lady said, a lot of our things were displaced along with us that I cannot get back, along with my children's kids. Clothes, which we had to start all over again. I'm in full support of this bill because I feel like it was a total unjust, and there should not be people in that government entity working there that are not for the people, that would rather see people out on the street than to see that they are struggling, but they still are being responsible and made a way and made a payment, and that you cannot put everybody in the same category because not all tenants are the same. You treat people like on case-to-case basis. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Omar. Where are you, Omar?
Good evening. My name is Omar R., and I'm a paralegal from the Public Justice Center and a member of the Safe Homes Now Coalition. I'm speaking on behalf of Randy Wright and Melissa McCall, 2 city residents who are in the throes of homelessness in large part due to the lack of a reclamation period. Ms. McCall was evicted from her home on July 24th of this year. Despite the court entering a judgment against her and not her fiancé, their landlord defied the court's ruling and filed a writ with both of their names. In just one morning, Ms. McCall's family was evicted, losing over $30,000 of personal belongings and work equipment in the process. Despite asking for just one more day to get her things back, her landlord refused, asking for a ransom of $6,000. Facing the impossible choice of either her things or paying for somewhere to stay for the night, Ms. McCall was forced to choose the latter, losing everything to get a roof over her head and her 3 children. Had there been a reclamation period, she could have kept her belongings in a storage unit while finding a place to stay. With no prior notice of the eviction date, Randy Wright's eviction started with an abrupt knock on the door from the sheriff. Informed that he had to leave immediately, he grabbed only a few essentials and was locked away from over $10,000 of his belongings over owing the landlord a mere $350, which he would have finished paying beforehand if he had received notice. His medications lost in the eviction and forced into a shelter, Mr. Wright soon developed a serious infection. 3 days ago, the infection led to the amputation of his right leg. As I speak, Mr. Wright is still in the hospital recovering from the operation. Had there been a reclamation period at the time of his eviction, he would have had critical time to recover his medication and other belongings. And most importantly, he would still have his health with him. We cannot continue to ignore the dignity and safety of residents like Mr. Wright and Ms. McCall within the city's current abandonment provisions. I urge this committee to vote in favor of Bill 250087. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have Rachel Buck. Oh, she's not here. Wait. Oh, Rachel Buck.
Good evening, council members. My name is Rachel Buck. I'm the Director of Advocacy at A Wider Circle, a Maryland-based social service organization and the largest furniture bank in the DMV. On behalf of our organization and our participant-led Social Justice Committee, we support this bill. Each year, through A Wider Circle's work to end furniture poverty, we serve about 200 families from Baltimore City and 10,000 individuals across the region, providing furniture and home goods at no cost. I have come to share two things. First, a full 10% of those we served who called us last year had lost their items due to an eviction. If those individuals could have retained their items, we could have served 1,000 additional people last year who are in serious need of support. Secondly, furniture poverty is a serious issue. It is defined as the inability to access, afford, or maintain essential household furniture for a functional, safe, and healthy home. And our research shows that living without essential furniture contributes to physical pain, poor sleep, poor mental health, trouble succeeding at work, and challenges for children at home and school. So with this bill, we have an opportunity to address a cause of furniture poverty. It is with those that we serve in mind that we stand in support of this bill and ask for you to join us. Thank you.
Perfect. Next is Thomas Rudas.
Hello, I'm 60 and I was evicted about 2 weeks ago. The one question I want to know is, I'm no Bolshevik, for God's sakes, but I gotta say, if you're a landlord, why wouldn't you want this? That's what I want to know. I mean, my God, a 7-day reclamation? I mean, it would humanize everybody, including you. I mean, this country, it was founded on greed. It's got us twisted. Fine. It only matters what we do now, not what happened before. 7 days is nothing. And imagine how many people could change knowing that you have 7 days. It's a lot. That's it.
Thank you. Next is Sherry Harrington.
Good evening, council. I too am 60, and I too was evicted. My notice came from my daughter, who called me while I was at work to say that the sheriff and the property manager was at my apartment. That was my notice. On that day, my fur babies were confiscated, were taken to Barks, and the locks were changed. The next day, I came and I spoke with the property manager, and she told me that, I said, what am I going to do to get my possessions back? She said, oh, we need to contact the trash out people. The trash out people. Okay. And when they make that appointment with the trash out people, she'll let me know and I can come and collect my things then. But what I really wanted to bring to this council's attention is the fact that I had to ask her, could I please get my mother's urn? I lost my mother 3 years ago. All I wanted was her urn at that moment and my medication. And she told me what? No. That when the trash out people come, that is when you can get your mother's urn. This is the most outrageous thing I've ever heard of. And you landlords, I really want to weep for y'all. But when you have folk that won't even let you go and get your mother's urn, that's a problem. This is a property manager. Where's the humanity with that? And if you can wait, you've waited already 90 days for, or what is the process, 120 days for an eviction to finalize? What's 7 more days going to matter? 7 more days is not going to kill you. You've waited that long. That's all I have to say. I pray this bill, and I pray that this bill passes. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Harrington. I have a David Cohen.
It's David Kahan, and I'm a landlord in Baltimore City. It is understandable that an eviction is emotionally damaging. It's actually heartbreaking. But why should the burden be placed on an already overburdened landlord? As a landlord, we are forced to go through this eviction. We didn't choose this. We're not just a business going through a case. We're not, just looking at this as it's just another file. I myself, forgave over $12,000 for one specific resident who her brother put her into a situation that she wasn't aware of. I deal with all of these on a case-by-case basis. To me, every eviction is people. We are hardworking people, ourselves, who have a responsibility to support our employees and their families and the quality of life for our residents that are rent paying. When rent isn't paid, our dedicated team members can't pay their own rent. When you say landlords, we aren't a faceless entity, a corporation with deep pockets. We're a small business or other small businesses struggling to support a community. This law will have a direct negative impact on our ability to do so. In summary, we are all looking for a solution to working together, and this bill, unfortunately, is not it. A few things to keep in mind. We have already been paid for about 4 months and have provided ample notice to the tenants. This places an undue burden on the landlords that are already not being paid. This is not a 30 days to evict state that will require a longer reclamation period, as was mentioned earlier. This will overall raise the costs for the residents. Also for squatting, the way it is now, if a landlord lets a tenant into the unit to get the belongings, the police will not remove them if they decide to squat. Will that be a change? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next is Lorraine Ericott.
Good evening, members of the committee. My name is Lorraine Aricot. I'm the Senior Policy Analyst at 1199 SCIU, United Healthcare Workers East. We ask for a favorable report on Council Bill 2587. As a labor union that represents healthcare workers, we know that housing justice is health justice. When a family loses their possessions, it impacts their ability to take care of themselves. In addition to losing furniture and valuables, a family may lose diapers, prescription medication, wheelchair, crutches, inhalers, CPAP machines, hearing aids, eyeglasses, infant formula, food, and personal items that provide emotional support and stability. So when a property owner decides to initiate eviction proceedings, they condemn a family to cascading housing insecurity and long-term harm. This bill is about harm reduction. Losing one's possessions for someone with serious health issues, mobility issues, or behavioral health needs could be the breaking point, and this bill can help prevent that. We need to allow tenants an opportunity to reclaim their personal property, not only because it is sensible, moral, and equitable, but the health of our communities depend on it. The TPRA is a critical measure to give tenants the opportunity to get their personal possessions after they have been evicted. It is imperative that Baltimore City stops the unjust and unconstitutional practices of denying a tenant the right to their personal property after they have been evicted. For those reasons, on behalf of 1199 SCIU, we urge a favorable report on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Albert Turner.
Good evening, Albert Turner, the Public Justice Center, asking for a favorable report. I'd like to thank Ms. Aricant for what she said last, which is that evictions in Baltimore City are unconstitutional. Every single eviction that occurs in Baltimore City is a violation of the Due Process Clause. In addition, we are dealing with a class action lawsuit, which means that for every single eviction, the city's on the hook, taxpayers are on the hook for the amount of property value that is lost by the tenant. If I can go back to the 2007 ordinance that rendered this abandoned, if you look, the original bill had a reclamation period in it. The reclamation period was in the original 2007 bill. Now that reclamation period was removed because the landlords got involved. And because of that, the city is looking at a class action lawsuit, millions of dollars of taxpayer money towards all these tenants who lost their property. And because of that, we need to come back and we need to fix this reclamation period. It's moved from 30 days to 7 days, which is in line with many, many jurisdictions. Over half the states in the United States have this reclamation period. And all of the sky falling down, all of the fire and brimstone that we've heard from landlords, that has not happened in these jurisdictions. It just has not. And I want to be very, very clear, if I can, what the landlords are asking you is, they're asking you to, instead of they are asking you to protect their pockets so that the taxpayers have to pay out. They're asking the city to continue to be liable to protect their pockets because they do not want to do what West Virginia does, what Pennsylvania does, what Delaware does, Washington, D.C. does, what Tennessee does, what Alabama does, what Chicago does. All of these jurisdictions do this. And yet here we are fighting over something that Maryland and Baltimore City has been needed to do. I'm asking for a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go with Nadia Hutchison.
Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Nadia Hutchinson. I'm a member of Baltimore Renters United, and I'm also a Baltimore City foster parent. When I first became a foster parent, we go through a series of trainings where we learn about trauma that children endure. And one thing that they really pressed is that when a child loses all of their possessions, it can be extremely traumatizing for an already traumatizing transition. They shared how it can lead to increased anxiety, insecurity, grief, as well as later in life hoarding behaviors and learning disruptions. See, children are losing family pictures, and we've all probably had that toy or that blanket that is like our emotional support that we get through and that we cannot sleep without. And while it might not see that there's a direct connection between foster care and tenant possessions, 1 in 5 renters includes a child under the age of 18. So there are a lot of families that are impacted by evictions. As I've been reflecting and listening, it seems very much that landlords are mostly worried about their own profits. But I asked Baltimore City, do you want to further cause trauma and pain to children and families? Or do you want to allow kids and families to have dignity in an area and time of their lives that is already extremely challenging? I ask everyone to vote in favor. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know Rachel Cutler is not here, so we will refer to the committee members to CJUFJ's actual official testimony. Next, we will have Brenda. Yes. I was trying to reach your last name.
Thank you, Chairperson Torrance and members of the committee. My name is Brenda Herford. I'm a housing attorney at Maryland Legal Aid, and we're here in support of Council Bill 250087 with amendments. We have submitted written testimony for your review as well. I support this bill because I've seen up close what happens when an eviction also becomes the loss of everything a family owns. 13 years ago, I worked in property management for a large community company operating across several states. I was sent to help a newly acquired property in Largo, and it happened to be eviction day. I went with the sheriff, the eviction crew, and maintenance as we executed warrants. At one apartment in particular, the sheriff knocked, no one answered, so maintenance opened the door. Inside, it was clear the family hadn't moved out. The home was fully furnished, and it looked like life had been interrupted. There were remnants of a baby shower, unwrapped gifts, diapers, formula, a stroller, things for a baby that had not been born yet. I called every number. I called every emergency contact. I finally reached the mother in the hospital in active labor, about to deliver her baby. Oh, I can't see, I'm so sorry. I asked if anyone could bring money to redeem that day. She said no. I asked how much time she needed to find help. She didn't know. I could hear the panic in her voice, and it haunts me to this day. I asked the sheriff to skip the unit and come back at the end to buy her time. No one came. When we returned, I watched everything that family owned, especially those brand new baby items, put on a major road. Cars slowed down. People pulled over. Members of the community, strangers and neighbors, loaded that family's belongings into their cars and into their apartments. And that's not the only time I've seen this. I've put out children's unwrapped Christmas presents. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Tanya Spriggs.
Thank you, Baltimore, for allowing me to stand here and speak. My name is Tanya Spriggs. I am one of the leaders at the Social Justice Committee, A Wider Circle. I just want to say I'm for the Tenant Possession Recovery Act right up front. I was, when I lived in Maryland so many years ago, me and 3 other members of our household faced an eviction. Unbeknownst to us at that time, when the sheriff knocked on the door and put the sticker on the door, we had no idea we were being evicted because one of the third members didn't tell us that she didn't pay the rent. The elderly member of our resident was upset, and clearly the sheriff saw that he was upset and had compassion on us and allowed us at least 3 more hours to get the things that we needed. Even though it was wonderful that he did that, 3 hours wasn't still enough time to gather all the important things that we needed, and even thinking about what was important was not enough time. So I just want to say to the landlords, where's your compassion? Just compassion. Compassion doesn't cost anything. I don't think a few days is going to hurt you, giving a person a few days. So I'm for the Recovery Act. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Nia Crawford.
Good evening, and thanks for letting me speak. My name is Nia Crawford. I'm a Baltimore City resident. I'm a small landlord. I work full-time. I'm also a licensed real estate agent. And my last experience with an eviction, it was horrible. When the sheriff's office showed up, there was a house full of their property. They were not prepared to move. They cursed me. I had to call the police to come and stay there. I had to call extra people to come and help me get rid of their belongings. I got texts afterwards to say I better watch out. I'm going to be physically assaulted when I go back over to the property. And it makes matters worse, they moved right next door to the property where I had to go and try to get it ready to rent to somebody else. So the safety issue is real. And this whole reclamation, I'm sorry, I might be saying the wrong word, but for me, it puts me in a position of having to interface with people who are already out for me. It's real, you all, it is real. I'm a small landlord, it's just me. That's it, it's just me. I have to pay people to come and support me in times like these. We're talking about us us being responsible, putting people's personal property in a safe place. What about inventory? What about if they come and say, well, there are things missing? What about that? Is somebody gonna count what's there so that we know what was there and it's still there when they come to get it, when they come to reclaim it? And what about when we agree on a time for them to come and get their items and they don't show up? I mean, what's supposed to happen? This costs money. And as I said, I'm a small landlord. I work full time. I work in PG County. I love Baltimore. I live in this city. I support this city. I want this to work out.
I believe this is Fatima Wilkerson.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Fatima Wilkerson. I am a lifelong Baltimorean. I'm still in my scrubs from work. I'm a healthcare worker. I'm a surgical tech by trade. I work out of state though, but I'm very proud to say that I've been a fierce advocate for Baltimore City and the people of Baltimore City for most of my adult life. A lot of the council members know me already, and I run my mouth a lot, and so I'm here to do some of the same things. So, growing up, I've had some of the same experiences of transient. I've been evicted as a child and had people come take my stuff off of the street. And as an adult, I had a bad relationship that ended. It ended up being evicted by regional management. I paid you though. I paid you eventually, but I have been victim of an eviction. And I was able to get a career and own a home and become a property housing provider. I've also been a squatter too. So I have so many lenses that I view this situation under, and I still am here in opposition of this bill. It takes about 3 to 4 months to evict someone from a property, and we don't want to do it. I'm the type of landlord, I'm a small housing provider that goes out on a limb for my tenants. I have tenants who I consider my little sister. One of my tenants' car got towed, and I took them to the city impound lot and put it on my personal credit card to get it out. I feel like this is being punitive towards these landlords and these who really, really care about and are advocates for making their housing affordable. We don't want to raise the rents. We want to keep it affordable even though our prices are going up. And 4 months is devastating to a small landlord. It's devastating. By the time the tenant's out and the unit's turned over, it's about 6 months of unpaid mortgage or costs that you have to incur. So while I feel like no one wants to see their stuff out on the street or have to re-get birth certificates and things like that, we can find a better way to make this happen that's not punitive to us. So thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is the illustrious Kim Trueheart still here with us? Come on down.
Good evening. I've been in this city for 69 years, and I'm proud to say that this is inching closer to a trauma-informed practice, procedure. I commend you, but you can't stop here. Baltimore needs to become trauma-informed in a big way, compassionate in some ways. The young lady just spoke, who's gonna go and protect those people's possessions? I'm not saying it's your job to do it, but hire somebody in their council office to go out and check. We've got to go the extra mile. The fact that we're recognizing the harm that's being done by that process is one thing. There are other things that harm people and their lives and their children. But we need to do more. I'm not clear on the notice aspect of this piece of legislation. Often an evicted person doesn't have a new address to go to. And so can somebody explain, not here, not now, but I need to understand, and if you're not considering that this person doesn't have an address, what about a public notice that this landlord has 7 days as a result of this law, and put it in the town square, erect the town square first?
Ms. Trueheart, I gotta stick to the 2 minutes, and I know it's not enough. Micah Avery.
Good evening, Chair Torrance and members of the committee. My name is Micah Avery, and while I work with various organizations in the housing world here in Baltimore City, I am here today as a resident, a local PhD student studying public policy, and someone who's experienced the tragedy of eviction and housing insecurity myself multiple times through my adolescence. And for this hearing today, I just want us all to really put our preconceived ideas about each other to the side, because we are not here to rehash some longstanding fight between landlords and tenants. We're not here to determine anybody's worthiness of housing. Housing is a human right. We are here today to talk about human compassion. And to have compassion, we have to be honest about the economy people are living in right now. In Maryland, more than 50% of our renters are already considered cost burden. They're spending more than 30% of their income just to keep a roof over their heads. People are working, people are paying their bills, people are disabled, people are doing everything that they can to stay afloat, but still one missed paycheck, one unexpected expense, one rent increase, one family emergency can be enough to push somebody over the edge. And when people are already struggling to survive, eviction isn't some mystical thing off in the distance. It's a really real threat that's looming over the heads of families in our own community. So we have to ask ourselves today, when someone loses their house, do we really want to punish them more by making sure that they lose everything that they own too? Because this isn't about whether someone made a mistake or fell behind. It's about what happens to a human being when the economy and their own community doesn't give them any room to fall or need help. Eviction is already very devastating, but watching your belongings, your clothes, your documents, your medications, your family photographs, the things that make your life, thrown out onto the street. Or worse, you lose access to them completely. That's trauma. That is displacement in its full term. But I also understand some of the opposition here to this bill today. This bill creates more responsibilities for landlords. And I understand that storing and making property available for retrieval can be an inconvenient task on top of the other things mounting on landlords and property partners. And you know what? I do agree that the burden for tenant possession recovery honestly shouldn't fall solely on the landlord or property manager. I think it's a good opportunity for us all to collaborate. We're all working towards the same goal of keeping people housed. Thank you.
Thank you. Next we have Jack. I cannot read your last name. I think there is a Jack Bavera. I don't think he's here. Perfect. This looks like Riley Rosenshore.
Riley?
Oh, there you go.
Yes, thank you. Sorry, I didn't hear that right. Hello, council members. Thank you for having me. My name is Riley Grace Rochon. I'm here on behalf of the Green Healthy Homes Initiative, and we are here in support of the Tenant Possession Recovery Act. I would refer you generally to our written testimony, especially that of our executive director, Ruth Ann Norton. But generally, I want to use my time to respond to some comments I've heard from some of the landlords who are here today. There has been a lot of testimony about, oh, this would be very burdensome. Oh, this would be too heavy to put on the landlords. I feel like I've heard that a lot in other policies that I've worked on. Let's take that in good faith. In 1996, our organization helped to pass one of the strongest lead laws in the country. And we heard a lot of the same arguments at that point. What was the result of that? Since we passed that, we have helped to reduce incidents of childhood lead poisoning by 99%. Throughout the state of Maryland. Don't be discouraged from taking a strong stance in favor of tenants. Make sure you're passing something that will strongly protect them and their rights when they are evicted. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Anthony Brown.
Good evening. I hope all is fruitful. Chairman Torrance and members of the committee. My name is Anthony Brown. I'm a landlord. I'm also a property provider and live in the city of Baltimore. Right, here we go. I'm a Baltimore housing provider and I work with landlords through the failure to pay rent process here in Baltimore. I want to be clear and upfront. I'm not here to oppose the bill, recovering their belongings. That's fair, and the courts have spoken on it. I'm here because Bill 25-0087, as written, has a problem this committee can fix. The bill makes the housing provider the custodian of an evicted tenant's belongings for up to 30 days. Across the country, the custody relationship is exactly where the lawsuit happens, and is almost always the housing provider who gets sued for what the law calls conversion. In Pennsylvania, the model for this bill, a provider who mishandles one step faces triple damages plus the tenant's attorney's fees. This draft's important. That kind of exposure with no safe harbor. This draft imports the kind of exposure with no safe harbor to protect the provider who follows the rules. In addition to squatters and breaking in and things of that nature with a property that's pretty much has all the chattel and belongings in the property. Other states have already solved this problem. Nevada limits provider liability to actual negligence. New York and Massachusetts route the property to a neutral licensed storage facility so the provider is never the custodian and can lock the unit the day the eviction is executed. Every functional version of the law pairs the tenant's rights with real protection for the provider. This draft doesn't. So I'm not asking to kill this bill. I'm asking you to make it workable for the landlords and the housing providers. Route the belongings to the storage, to secure storage and a liability safe harbor. Thank you.
Next, we have Ben Frederick.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. I've been in the real estate business in Baltimore City. I've been a resident in Baltimore City all my life. I've been in the real estate business in Baltimore City for 45 years. The young lady that just left, she talked about the 1996 lead paint law. That law became, at the time that was being negotiated, I was on the board of the Property Owners Association. It's by us sitting down with legislators and people in the opposition, we worked out something that was really, really effective. So, but adding more time to the eviction process lowers the income to landlords. That lowers the value of housing in Baltimore City. By increasing the time, it increases the cost of owning rental properties. That means the value of the properties goes down. If the value of the properties goes down, tax revenue to Baltimore City goes down because there are many, many rental properties that are on the tax rolls in Baltimore City. If the tenant doesn't pay the rent, the court orders the tenant to move. If the tenant doesn't move, the tenant gets evicted. You have to give 14 days notice. I have to give them notice in writing when their eviction is occurring. They have 14 days to move out voluntarily. If they don't move out in that 14-day period, then I have the right to schedule an eviction and take care of and get the property cleaned out and get it back on the market. If the tenant stays in possession of the property after the eviction date, then you've got a property with no more rental income coming in. The cost of rental housing goes up, and the availability of rental housing to the next people becomes delayed. So you're renewing somebody, you are rewarding somebody who doesn't pay their rent. In 1982, evictions took 30 days. If you didn't pay your rent, you get evicted.
Perfect. We're now moving to online testimony. If you wish to provide testimony online, please use the raise hand function so we can recognize you for online testimony. Just one? Okay, we have one person. We are now recognizing Aaron Murphy. Aaron, you have been unmuted. You may now testify.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I appreciate the opportunity to testify. I didn't grow up in Baltimore. I grew up in Virginia, but my family was evicted 2 or 3 times. I remember waking up in the middle of the night. It was around 3, and my parents woke me up and said we needed to move. It was upsetting and it was stressful. But today, I'm a landlord, and the reason that I am not in support of this in the reclamation period is that I think there's a part of this that's been missed. It is traumatizing or frustrating and causes a lot of problems when people lose their belongings. But what was really important about our situation in Virginia is we were able to find new places to move into and new places to rent after this experience happened, because landlords were willing to give second chances to tenants because they understood that their rights were going to be protected if they gave us a second chance. When you look online on Facebook and other platforms, you see tenants in Baltimore continually asking, are there any second chance landlords? Is there anyone that's really going to give me a second chance? I've had an eviction, will someone give me a second chance? There's a bunch of people that have come up and said that landlords are wrong to have an issue with this type of legislation. But it's still the case that if landlords do have this issue, they're likely to only accept the most stellar and pristine candidates for housing and not be willing to take chances when you continually increase the burden on them if they take a chance and end up having taken someone that then turns into an eviction. All of these arguments about why this will be costly and burdensome on landlords are reasons why landlords will use it to be less accepting of second chance applicants, and those are the people that need the most help. That's what I have to say. I think that that's being missed. I think it's extremely important.
Thank you. We have one more person, which is Latrice Downridge. Latrice, you're unmuted. Oh, there you go.
Hey y'all, sorry I couldn't be there tonight. I'm on the mend. But anywho, my name is Latrice Downridge, Executive Director of Baltimore Renters United. Obviously, we do support this bill. And I do want to, I've heard some comments from some landlords, and I think this narrative needs to stop about tenants just not paying rent. We have to recognize the factors involved. You know, tenants lose their job, tenants going through some things. It's just not untrue that tenants are just not paying their rent. We do have a serious problem of bad actor landlords in this city who weaponize the courts to evict tenants in the first place, but stripping them of their dignity, where they lose their family heirlooms, clothing, like medication, important documentation, should not happen in the first place. So thank you all for your time. And again, we do support this bill, and we do encourage landlords to just please have some humanity. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming. I just want to leave with some closing remarks and just make sure that we're very clear. This bill was not up to 30 days. It gave the court an opportunity to extend up to 30 days with a reasonable cost. I just want to be clear because the messaging that I've seen on social media shows me that we need a literacy problem in the city. that literally 30 days, it was up to the court's decision. We now moved to 7 days because we looked at what the other surrounding jurisdictions have done. I am not a person who's gonna just sit here and listen to things that are just wrong. As I tell my students, we live in facts. Fact is that if you have a writ and a person is staying and they are now being a squatter, they no longer have a landlord-tenant relationship with you. And the Baltimore City Police Department, 100% of the time, will escort them out of that property because they are now in your actual property and are now illegally squatting. That is the law, right? I just want to make sure, because this is a public forum, and I would be remiss to let anything that was factually incorrect be said in the public forum not corrected, because we now live in times when people just say anything out loud. So I just want to make sure that we said and we put that in perspective. But I want to say is I thank you all for coming because, one, I don't have all the answers. Hearing testimony from both sides allows us to have discussions amongst ourselves as a council, allows us to interact and accept amendments from either side to actually figure this out. And I'm just going to be transparent. I have the votes. I could have voted up tonight. I want to make sure that we have a bill that fits Baltimore City, that adheres to what our residents are experiencing, and that we also have bad actors. I don't think every landlord is a horrible person. Let me be frank. I can list all 12 of my bad landlords in my district right now who have violated every chance possible that they had. It'd be a small one to a large one that I've seen have done inhumane things, from having people live in properties with rats, not actually have a rental license, or have a property manager that they purposely did not inform about the city law to purposely put those persons out, and then use that ignorance of the property manager to then have a court then evict the person anyway, because they did not know right from wrong, but they did not do the right process. This process is cumbersome. That's why we're trying to streamline it, because in some instances you got 14 days, some instances you have 7 days, and in one instance there was 30 days written in the law in terms of what happens. We are trying to streamline this so that if you are a landlord, you know you got 14 days for this, you got 7 days for that, and it's no matter across the board. The only thing we did not touch was foreclosure proceedings, because the state has very clear guidelines for that. It's actually one of the clearest, it's actually one of the clearest texts that we have in terms of anything in law right now, because it is a respect and has due process written in every aspect of it. But as we found out from the court's decision and the $198,000 that we paid to the Taubman family, that we have to get this right. Thank you. Oh. Because you didn't sign up, you get 1 minute.
You know I love y'all, but I didn't come to just look at your faces. Hi, guys. So my name is Lauren Bird, and I am a tenant here in Baltimore City. Will it start at 2? Because it started at 53 seconds.
Good, 2. You have 2 minutes. I was playing.
Okay. So I just wanted to come to you all real quick because I am a tenant here in Baltimore City. And I wanted to quickly share my personal experience with eviction. So in 2017, I got my first apartment with my daughter. It was a big deal. I am a single mother and I'm a one-income home. I've basically been under the poverty line the entire time I've been an adulthood here in the city. So my income was already tight at that point. I was in a car accident while I was living in that apartment and was unable to walk for an extended period of time. And so, of course, that affected my income. During that time, the eviction filings began. Each time they filed, there was an additional $300 to $400 a month added on top of what my rent already was. And I was filed on 16 times while I was living in a Pangea property. And so when I was forcing them to deal with my roof that was leaking into my apartment is when they finally filed for no right to redemption. That gave me 6 days to move out of my apartment. And so I had to make a very real decision that I had to deal with the things that were my personal affairs, which caused me to have to leave behind all of my furniture, me and my daughter's beds, my couches, everything in my home. I've heard several of the landlords talk about their income that is affected, but a woman who has to feed herself and her child on very little money as well as maintain a home, my income is affected also. And the putting people out and not allowing them to be able to have their items moving on to their next situation just perpetuates the cycle. So,
Thank you. I'm
thank
sorry.
you.
2
No
minutes.
worries. I just didn't know what the time was doing for it.
It is totally fine. Come on down, sir. You got your 2 minutes.
How everybody doing today? My name is Damian Ray. How y'all doing today? My name is Damian Ray. I'm an investor and property manager, land inspector, general contractor here in Baltimore City. I had to learn all of that stuff to be able to find out how y'all guys work. I just had one question about the details. If the tenant comes back to get their stuff, are they able to pick through it and then the landlords just have to get the trash and dispose of it? Or when they come back, are they responsible for taking all of it? Like, when y'all get to working out those details, those are one of the details.
It's been a long night. We're technically not supposed to answer questions from the public, but I'll walk through the amendments again. So what we did is that we aligned the process with the District of Columbia, which allowed for reclamation to take place between 8 a.m. and 6 p.m. Monday through Friday. And if you give 24 hours notice, you can do it on Saturday. However, once you come back to redeem your items, you have 24 hours from that time. So if you come in at 3 p.m. on the day before, you have till 3 p.m. the next day to remove your items within 24 hours. So I heard landlords, I heard tenants about what that process looks like. We know truthfully that because of the way that the economy is, U-Haul probably doesn't have enough U-Hauls, depending on what's happening right now, because people are undercutting the costs to move items as well as move things around this city. And a number of our small hauls actually rent the U-Hauls themselves to actually haul the items to places that they need to, like our landfills. So that's why we put it in, because our other jurisdictions have those hours. Those jurisdictions found that it was reasonable for both small and large landlords. So we've done more research to understand what those processes are. We're still learning more. HABC has some more information to give me about how their sister agencies are doing it across the various states, because we have housing authorities in West Virginia, DC, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. They all do something different, and they all figure out a way to do it within the time that those bodies have given them, the 7 days or the 10 days. So we're doing this as a learning process, but also trying to get this right, because as we know, more than likely, given what we saw from Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City law will probably be the model for the rest of the state anyway. So we're making sure that we're getting this right so that our partners across the state and other jurisdictions, when they start pursuing this legislation themselves, have a roadmap that is reasonable, but also consistent with not only dignity and compassion, but recognizes that there's a two-way street in terms of how we access these items. And we recognize that one of the things that we do need to do is education, because just hearing from real estate professionals in the room tonight, a lot of people said some things wrong that technically is not the law as Baltimore City, right? These are things that we have to do on our own part. That's why the sheriff's office thankfully put out a pamphlet that explained the process, but people were still getting the process wrong. And it's a hard place to be in. That's why we had sheriff's deputies through the state required to put it actually physically on the person's property and mail them, because we had landlords who weren't actually sending them at all. And to tell you the truth, I've had most of the cases we get about evictions in my district that come to me in my office, the notice was never properly given. And we have to push back and call the sheriff's office and tell the landlord and have to have meetings with them to say, this is the proper process. Like, we understand you want to reclaim your property, but now you have to start all over again because you didn't follow the process. And that's why it is important to me to clean up the regulations and the statute. So across the board, it is consistent. It's not 30 days here, 7 days there, and we haven't consistently fixed it, because I don't think you need a process chart to then follow the tree to say, is this a tenant holdover? Is this a failure to pay rent? Is this a breach of lease? And what is the process for each one? Those are all things that make it too cumbersome and complicated. That's why we're trying to come up with one process that is streamlined and gives everyone the same bar. And that way we ensure due process is consistent across the board. So that is the intent. And that is why we are trying to make sure that we adhere to the Fourth Circuit's ruling.
So there will be some literature in there explaining whether the tenant can pick through their stuff or leave the rest?
We're still working on it. So like, I can give you an example. I got an amendment today that wanted to specify a list of things that tenants can't leave behind, like jewelry, televisions, guns, children, dogs, right? These are all things that like, we're working on it because these are the things that people don't think about. And I'm not here to say that that's a no, right? These are legitimate things. Like, you shouldn't leave jewelry behind in a place if you're leaving. But also, people should be given time to actually get their birth certificate and their social security number, right? Because you need an address to actually get those things later down the line. If you don't have an address, you can't get it. So that's where we're trying to find that balancing act to make sure that we allow people to have the dignity, but also the process be streamlined in a way that is not overly burdensome on everybody. Hopefully that gives you my insight into my brain tonight.
I'm sure we can find an agreement. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, guys. With that being said, we are adjourned.